We'll go ahead and get started to our pre-meeting. Today is January 17th, 2023, and we have 4 out of the 7 commissioners here present for the pre-meeting, so we'll go ahead and get started. First thing on the agenda is review of the agenda. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Next on the agenda is communication reports or prior city council meeting and or reports or current applications as needed. Nothing on that. Okay, next is the training.
We're actually not ready for the training today, but we'll be prepared for the next meeting. So,
okay. Then next we have is the oath of office for the reappointment commissioners, and then the election of chair and vice chair, and appointment of 2 commissioners to the design review committee, appointment of 1 commissioner to serve as the CDBG home committee for 2023, and then, like I said, we've go ahead and approve the minutes. And then we'll have a public hearing on CRS, America Ochre Tire and Service.
so yeah, you could discuss any of those items now during your pre-meeting.
What?
Did you want to discuss them in that order?
Actually, I'd like to go back and see if anybody would want to volunteer for the Design Review Committee first.
I nominate Kent and McKenna.
That'll serve them.
Yeah, I wasn't here for this meeting last year. I got nominated.
That's right.
Do I have any volunteers that would like to?
I like his suggestion.
Okay, well. Yeah.
Can't take any action till then.
Well, this is just a discussion. How about for the CDBG home committee?
I'd love to do that again if y'all will let me. So.
Can you tell me what that committee's all about?
She can tell you better than.
It's Community Development Block Grant. It's the Community Development Block Grant. So you just take the funding that HUD provides to West Jordan City, review applications, and then determine how those funds are allocated. There's generally someone from the Planning Commission, someone from the City Council. Julie serves usually as a few residents serve as the residents of the community. It's very interesting if you'd like to do it. I don't want to be the hog of that meeting, but.
I don't want to hog either meeting, but I've been on design review for the
Oh,
past
then-
year or whatever, but I'm happy to do either one.
No,
whatever.
I'll let you have it then. That's
Whatever.
great.
Chair, if I can add a couple of comments. The great thing about this committee is you get to see the different organizations that assist residents in the city. What we do is we find organizations such as Action, who does services, and we give them some money, and that money goes to them providing services to our residents in the city. For example, a resident that's low income, their furnace goes out, and they don't have any way to replace and do that furnace. We give them the funds, and then they use that for residents that need it, and they got allocated to there. And I get to see it there, and I see how those organizations go and serve our community in several different aspects, or down payment assistance, or getting a roof, or things like that. It's really a great opportunity, an eye-opener. I think more people should be aware of what the city is doing to help its residents, and this is what this organization does.
When does CDBG meet?
So they're going to meet in March on Thursday afternoons, I believe. They usually were like from 3 to 5 or something like that. Usually like every Thursday.
For about four Thursdays, and then there's a final. It's not onerous.
That time of day would be a little difficult. So how many times a year do they meet? Monthly?
Just once a year usually, but it's 4 times during March. So it's every week
In March.
Okay.
during March.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed my experience with design review, but I think for my own edification, I'd be delighted to serve on CDBG. I can make it work for 4 weeks.
I think that's amazing. You should. It is really a great committee. So
Okay. Oh, just while you were gone, too, you got nominated for the Design and Review Committee.
Okay.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Don't act so it's all good.
All right. Do we want to discuss anything else? Do we want to discuss the election of the chair and vice chair?
May as well.
Pardon me?
May as well.
Might as well.
Okay. Let's go with the chair first.
So I was thinking about this, looking over the report, last week or the weekend before. If she's so inclined, I'd like to nominate Trish because most of your time was done over Zoom. And I think you do a great job and you're very professional the way you handled it. But that's entirely, I'm not going to force, obviously. I don't have that authority.
That is so interesting because I had planned to nominate you, so I would like to nominate you to be the chair. I think it's a great opportunity, really, for leadership. So
And it's learning
it
experience.
is.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem.
Well, by the time you get it figured out, it's time to elect somebody different. So
Are you suggesting you should do it again?
I would be more than happy to do it again, but I'm not saying that. So you willing to?
I'd be fine with it. I would be fine. I do think that I like this notion of where the chair becomes the vice chair the following year to kind of help out. That's what it's been since I've been here.
And I'm fine with that.
So
too.
I think that's a positive thing.
Any discussion on those suggestions?
I'd be pleased to see either of those two people serving in that capacity.
Okay. Well, we're zipping right through here. And that is basically all we have as far as the pre-stuff.
Right, unless
I think no, because you've had your chance to do both. I think it would be interesting to have Ammon serve and have McKenna serve as his vice chair.
Jay will be the vice chair, won't he? Just-
No, doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be,
Yeah, we nominate the way we do.
Oh, okay.
and that's fine
Just
too.
because they have a different perspective of what we do here from their professional lives than the rest of us do. It'd be interesting to have that leadership that way.
Okay.
Again, she's not here, so she can't appreciate it.
Boy, little teacher, huh?
Better be on time.
Okay, but I have no issues with that. Any other discussion on those? Okay.
And then I don't know if you wanted to hear from Mark maybe a little on the review of balanced housing report where we've got a little time.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
With the clarification, we should have Greg Davenport, our utility manager, here for the main meeting. So if you have any detailed engineering questions, he should be here.
Okay. Mark?
So I didn't know if you wanted me to go over that in this meeting or in the main meeting, but I could do.
Yeah, can you do it in 20 minutes?
Sure. All right. Yeah. So the balanced housing ordinance. Just.
Let's just do a high level overview.
Oh, okay. Yeah, basically, so every year we do a report on these things just to see where we're at as far as our ratio to single family to multifamily housing. And long story short, we don't have enough single family homes to justify any more multifamily other than the exemptions under the balanced housing ordinance. So that's it. You'll get the
That
more
is the
detailed version later.
That's the 40,000 feet of overview.
I like it.
All right. And then, Mark, do you want to just give us an overview on the CRS American Ochre Tire and Service?
Yeah, so this is a hearing to look into the revocation of a couple of conditional use permits, one for CRS America and another for Ochre Tire and Service. Basically, long story short, it's come to our attention that vehicles are being parked on gravel surfaces rather than the paved surfaces required by city code and the conditions of approval and those conditional use permits. So this is just located right across the street from the Dannon facility. Well, sort of across the street from the Dannon facility, but there's a water well out there that's of a bit of concern. So.
Okay. And then I've noticed that the comprehensive general plan and future land use map has been postponed until the next meeting, so yeah, we will make sure we get that motion. Anything else we'd like to discuss?
Would you like to know why we're asking you to continue the?
That would be kind of nice.
Well, so much work has gone into the general plan, from our citizen committee to the commission. Corbin wanted to take one last look at the specifically the goals that the general plan establishes, and just see if there's a way to simplify. There's a lot of overlap and duplication, which in some cases is justified, but in other cases there's an opportunity to just condense and focus. And so he's asked Ray and Mark and a couple other staff to take a look at that. He was also looking at the financial impacts or the potential financial impacts to some of these goals. The general plan is a living document. We fully expect to be amending that frequently. One of the things that I don't know if the commission will be involved heavily on this, but once we get the general plan adopted, we're going to ask the council to look at those goals and help us prioritize, and so we can use that as a guide as we're working on our annual budgets and things like that. And so we're really going to use the general plan more than we've ever done before. And so we wanted one last temperature check before we bring it for a formal recommendation.
And then immediately after that, is it going to be presented to the city council?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else we want to discuss? Okay, we'll go ahead and adjourn until 6 o'clock. right, we'll go ahead and get started with West Jordan Planning Commission, Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. All members are present with the exception of Commissioner Marchant. So first thing on is the business item, and that is oath of office and the reappointment of commissioners.
Can we start with Trish?
Okay.
Yeah. I state your name,
I, Trish Hatch,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I'll support, obey, and defend
that I'll support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United
the
States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan,
and that I'll discharge the duties
and I'll discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you just sign this for me? You're next.
Is this number 3 or 4? Starting year 7.
Will you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I state your name,
I, Kent Shelton,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I'll support, obey, and defend
that I'll support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the laws and ordinances
and the laws and ordinances
of the City of West Jordan,
of the City of West Jordan,
and I'll discharge the duties
and I'll discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations. Have you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I state your name,
I, Ammon Allen,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I'll support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Utah,
the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan,
and I'll discharge the duties
and I'll discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations. Thanks, Chair, and welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Okay, next on the agenda is the election of chair and vice chair. We'll go ahead and have the motion for chair.
I nominate Ammon as chair and Jay as vice chair.
I'll second those nominations.
Any questions to the nominations? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. And with that,
Switch seats, switch.
that button right there.
All right. Well, this is, was not expecting to jump into it this fast.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Do I not get a monitor that works?
No.
Oh, this will be even more fun.
Yeah, now
I'm
you
gonna have to look
bring
off
your
your
iPad.
screen.
Here, you can use mine.
Wow, yes, you did. Okay, well, thank you. Our next item of business is appointment of two commissioners to the Design Review Committee.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Ken, I'm trying to think of your last name, Shelton, wow, that's bad, and Commissioner Marchant.
We have a motion for Commissioner Shelton and Commissioner Marchant,
And I'll second that.
and a second from Commissioner Thomas. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Did I do all right? All right. Okay. One for one, sweet.
And this is the design, this is for the.
CBD.
CDBG?
Yeah, CDBG.
Okay, so we have next an appointment of one commissioner to serve on the CDBG committee.
I think maybe before you do the CDBG, maybe there was some mentioning of meeting times for the Design Review Committee, right, Julie?
Oh, I apologize.
Oh, yes. I was just saying that there is a meeting next week at 5:30. It is by Zoom. And so I'll send the information. It's also on the website. The agenda's on the website too, so, okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, appointment of one commissioner to serve on the CDBG committee. Is that right? Okay,
I'll make a motion that Commissioner Wynn.
okay, we have a motion for Commissioner Wynn
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Last item on the business calendar, approved minutes from December 20th, 2022.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Thomas, second by Commissioner Quinney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I guess I should be saying aye on there too, huh? All right. All right, we'll move into the public hearing with Planning Commission recommendation to the City Council, starting
See,
with,
this one's to the Community
I'm
Development
sorry,
Director,
Community
right?
Development Director. Is that- It doesn't say it entirely on the,
Hang on, let's try this one. We're going off my iPad, so it's a little.
Yeah, it's a little confusing because item 6 is a recommendation of the Community Development Director, and then item 7, of course, it's tabled, but eventually will become a
There we go,
recommendation to the council.
all right. So this is CRS America Ochre Tire and Service at 5970 West Dannon Way, a revocation of conditional use permits, M1 zone, with the City of West Jordan being the applicant. And we will turn the time over to Mark.
All right, thank you, Chair. So, just give a little bit of a background on this. This is a property located at 5970 West Dannon Way, just kind of on the southeast corner of the Dannon facility for reference. But anyway, so back in 1995, this is when this site was first developed, and pretty much the only part of it that was developed was the building itself, and then kind of the immediate area around it for paving drive aisles and putting in the parking lot and landscaping. And so that's pretty much remained unchanged until today. Now there's been some gravel put in. I don't know when that was done, but other than that, that's about it. There has been some metal fencing, though, that was put in around 2016, 2017, roughly around there. But anyway, so just jumping forward to 2016 is when the first administrative conditional use permit was approved for CRS America. And this was for motor vehicle sales. And so one of the conditions of approval for that was that all vehicles needed to be parked on a paved asphalt or concrete surface. And so, so anyway, and then jumping forward to 2017, we got a new business license in for Ochre Tire and Service, which got its approval for a conditional use permit to operate motor vehicle repair in the drinking water source protection overlay. So, and that CUP also had a similar condition of approval as well. So again, fast forward to kind of the present day, kind of the main trigger that started this whole process was we got a business license in for Ochre Mountain Moving, which when a new business license is submitted, it's customary for staff to look into the conditions of approval of the property and make sure those are being met. And so we did that and went out to the property on September 21st of 2022. Took some photos from the road and noticed that there was quite a few vehicles being parked on a graveled surface. So that kind of triggered the investigation. We sent notice to the property owner just shortly thereafter through email, certified mail letters, and did that over the next few months, but received no response from the business owner until today around noon. So, so anyway, that's kind of the background. But jumping into the findings, so for conditional use permit to be revoked, there's 5 findings that that the Planning Commission needs to make in order to provide a recommendation to the Community Development Director for a final decision. So, so with that, there's a couple. So there's 2 criteria that we've found to be triggering this revocation. So the first one is criteria A, which is the conditional use is a nuisance or is detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. So you can kind of see here on the screen, this is a map of the drinking water source protection overlay, which was actually completed and updated in our recent water master plan. But anyway, so where this property is located, it's kind of hard to see on the map unless you squint, but that southeast corner of the property crosses Zone 2, which is a 250-day time of travel zone. And so as part of, under that drinking water source protection overlay, if a property crosses any boundary of one of those zones, the stricter zone would apply. So in this case, the entire property would be subject to Zone 2. And so what that means is that 250-day time of travel is the time that it takes for any chemicals that infiltrate the ground to travel to a water well, which is located across the street, basically behind the Coleman rental property. So let's see, and you can kind of see it here on the aerial map that shows where that is, but for context. So anyway, so this is we've run this by our water department, and they are quite concerned about this, especially if you know, there's no vehicle that's completely perfect as to not leaking fluids such as oil or antifreeze or anything like that onto the ground. And so so if those are being parked on either gravel or anything that's not an impervious surface, there's certainly a risk that it could travel to that water well and contaminate it. And in the event that that does happen, that depending on the circumstances, it could trigger Superfund site status and getting the EPA involved, which would be very, very costly. So that's criteria A. And then just kind of, so backing up a little bit, the other reason that we put these conditions of approval on the original CUP is that it reinforces a city code. And so this is a city code that says that every parking area, whether it's public, private, what have you, does need to be paved with asphalt or concrete. So jumping ahead to criteria E, for the revocation. So this criteria says the conditions of the permit have not been complied with. So again, going back to the photos that we took and what we could observe from this on the site, we observed vehicles were being parked on a gravel surface which is not paved and is therefore in violation of those conditions. So. And then the other criteria B, C, and D, we found that those weren't necessarily met. Reason being, first of all, we don't have any evidence that the conditional use permits were obtained by fraud, so that doesn't apply. The other criteria is that the conditional use permit has been altered. We haven't found any evidence that that the owners changed anything or done anything major there. And then the final one is that the use has been has ceased operation or is not operated in 6 months. We found that hasn't been the case. They've been renewing their business licenses every year, so they're up to date on those. So that's pretty much it from staff, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So maybe just one clarification, Mark, that criteria E in the staff report does say the conditions of the permit have not been complied with. But what you're saying is that's pretty much the same as criteria A, just the parking. So, and where this section only requires one or more, at least one, you're focusing your attention on criteria A, right?
Right, yeah, so, well, criteria A and criteria E, so E is pretty much straightforward as we see it. Criteria A deals more with health and safety, and so that's, again, dealing with the proximity to the water well.
And criteria E is pretty much based upon not complying with code, right?
Right.
Okay.
Any questions for staff? Okay, maybe to Mark is, and thank you for the clarification or the specifics on the conditions that are a concern. When the conditional use was first approved, and this is more of a, educate me on this. So it's for a car repair. Is there not some sort of a site plan or something that's brought into place to make sure that not only is there asphalt ground, but we're also collecting anything that may drip on that asphalt and running it into an oil water separator or some other similar device?
There was a site plan provided, but it wasn't very detailed beyond just a simple aerial photo. But going back through some of the minutes and some of the history on that, it looks like, I think the understanding at staff's level was that most of those vehicles would be parked inside the warehouse, or at least around it.
Okay. And can you share a little bit about the conversation you had today with the property owner, business owner?
Well, it lasted about an hour, so my memory's a little foggy, but basically, well, we can probably it'll probably be best to have the business owner kind of go over a lot of that, but generally there was some new information and that he was aware of, so probably be best to turn the time over to him.
Okay, appreciate that. Any other questions for staff? All right, well, sir, would invite you to come up, and it's the button on the right. If you'll push that, and then state your name and address for the record, please.
And do we need to have some kind of a motion for that? Because he's not.
Oh, and have him respond as part of the public.
Are we
Okay,
going
I'm
to give
sorry.
him additional time though? Well, and there's a member of the public, he'd get 3 minutes, right?
Well,
Do we
yeah.
need to I'll
That's
give
it.
him more
Take-
time to do that? Because I don't think he's going to only take 3 minutes, right?
Right, well, I know a lot of times with an applicant, and I know this isn't an application, but you generally give more time. I think, haven't we given even up to 10 minutes? So
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I just wanted to
Yeah.
see if we needed to make a motion on that, or if we're just let it roll?
Yeah, where you're, I think you can just let him have the time
Okay.
he needs in all fairness and due process,
now.
so.
And the other reason I think we'd want to bring him up is this gives us an opportunity to have a conversation, ask questions as well, correct?
Right.
Before the, okay. All right, apologize, feel free.
Okay. I'd like to move to table anything to do with this decision today, as I was only informed of this.
State your name and address for the
Oh,
record.
sorry. My name is Ryan Fuller. Do you want the address of the property location?
Oh, we're okay, thank you.
I was only informed of this. I found out on Friday after business hours. And obviously Monday was a holiday. Nobody answered the phone. I don't blame you. I tried. And today was my first opportunity to have a conversation with Mr. Forsyth. And I thought we had a productive conversation. I appreciated his time that he did give me. He's a great listener. For those of you who need therapy, maybe he's a guy that can offer some of that on the side. But I'm not prepared today to discuss the legal ramifications of this. I've sought counsel and need to have that counsel present and with me, and that's not going to be able to obviously happen tonight. And we dispute many of the findings that have been presented, and or there are misrepresentations that have been brought forward to the commission tonight. And we'd like to clarify and seek to clarify those items and those misrepresentations that are here and extant. And just as a quick example, Mr. Forsyth cites CRS America, which is our car dealership. He says he came out and investigated. If he did that, he would know that every car that CRS America owns is parked inside the building. The car dealership that we operate is actually inside the building, not outside. There are no signs of any signs posted on any vehicles for sale outside. That was part of the conditional use permit when we originally applied in 2016 to have this, and our car dealership is literally in the building. We use about a little over half of the building for that purpose, and that's easy to come in and verify and see. As that is there. So but there are many other things as well that are either incorrectly categorized or that are stipulated here in these notes and minutes that are incorrect, or were not part of the discussion originally when we received our permits. You can ask anything. I'm willing to talk.
Hey, Mark, can you go back to the pictures? So you said that everything is inside. Okay, that may be the case for the car dealership, but what do all the rest of these cars? I see U-Haul trucks and other vehicles outside, so they may not be for sale, but they're still not complying with the conditional use permit. Tell me what you've got here.
So we have a U-Haul franchise, and as a matter of fact, we were called an essential business during the COVID experience that we all went through. We were called by Salt Lake County and told that we needed to stay open at all times. I mean, obviously, business hours. They weren't requesting 24/7, but that we were an essential business and we needed to stay open and operate our U-Haul business. Further, we have a mechanical repair shop, and your photos here are indicative of only one day that perhaps this kind of level of vehicles were parked out there. That is not indicative of every day. And most of the vehicles I have a large area for the mechanical shop that is also indoors. Occasionally we have a new person that brings their vehicle out that parks or is in that area. Additionally, we do have, as is stated on there, on the top left picture there, we have an impound yard that is in the back of the property, fenced in, and we are allowed to have whatever type of cars in whatever shape back there in the impound area. As Mr. Forsyth cited, that we were not allowed to have any wrecked cars there, and we don't purposely get wrecked cars, but occasionally we do just because of having the impound yard. And those are just cars that are there on a temporary basis. They're on asphalt, and they are moved they're just there during a period of time in which you're waiting either for insurance companies to come and pick them up and take them to auction, or you're waiting for a body shop to come and pick them up and repair the vehicles.
Okay, so as I understand, the impetus for this entire conversation was the U-Haul franchise. You've got U-Haul trucks parked out here prior to receiving a business license from the city, and you say that this is not a correct representation. So it just seems crazy to me. What would you say is an average? Because it seems crazy to me that the day Mark goes out to take pictures of this, he happens to capture an entire lot full of cars that are non-compliant on a day that is not representative of a normal course of business. Second point, I don't see any exceptions in there that said, well, we can have people park there temporarily for a few days when they bring their car in and drop it off. The way I understand these conditional use permits were that every single one of them was to be complied with fully all the time. That there was no exception to where, oh, well, it's only there for an hour or a couple of days, and so it's okay to park it there. That's the issue I'm having here, is that I understand that you may not have received notification despite the fact that we have record of several attempts through certified mail, emails, voicemails to get in touch with you. I'm not gonna get into the middle of that, but what I do see is that we have, conditional use permits that are not being complied with, whether fully or partially, they're not being complied with, right? There's no gray areas. I see it, it's black and white. So, I mean, that's where I'm having an issue with this.
Is there a question there?
I'm just making sure you understand where I'm coming from on this. That you
I don't
my
understand where
vote.
you're coming from, but I need legal counsel to advise me on some of the things you just said or accused, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes back, including the water well. Is the information presented is not correct on the water well. So if you look, you can post this thing back up on the site again.
All right, let's see the water wells, Mark.
And I want to specifically point out that my site, there is about 16 feet of my site that is in the zone 2.
Yeah, so I had that same question, but Mr. Forsyth testified to this in his comments that the ordinance says that if any portion of your parcel is in that zone, the entire parcel applies. So while I agree with you, where you only have a tiny little part, that's not what the ordinance says. So it doesn't really matter to me that only a little bit's in there. That's black and white to me because that's written down in law. So I'm not accusing you of anything.
Sure.
All I'm doing is just stating what I'm seeing here.
It's zoned manufacturing
M1.
M1, which is heavy manufacturing. I don't know why that you would drill a well and put a well in many years after the fact of the building being put in place and having it been in operation, and then say now you can't operate anymore the way you were operating before. So, but like I said, I need to have legal counsel here I dispute the claims that are written in here, and there are false things and there are misrepresentations.
The only thing
And I'd like to table it. I'm just asking for some time to table it so that I have enough time to put this together. I don't want to not come. I do not want to not comply with the CUPs. I have every intention of making sure that I comply with the city ordinances. This is the first knowledge that I've received over years of operating this business that something might be wrong. And we did have a business permit for U-Haul. However, I have a person who worked for me who is now under criminal charges in West Jordan City, which is the reason why I did not get some of the communications from Mr. Forsyth, as that person was doing the mail, and also didn't continue renewing our business licenses that would have been just as simple as a renewal and had already been approved as it was.
Okay.
As CRS America was, as Ochre Tire and Service was. So
I wanna ask
it's not my attempt to come here and to say I will not comply, or it's wrong to comply, or I want to comply. I simply want some time to be able to review it.
Mark, can you respond to the one thing that he said that I had a question? Because he mentioned that his site was here first and then the well was built. Can you just I see Mr. Davenport shaking his head. I just want to have someone go on record and state what the timeline is there, just so that we have that in the record.
I would have to look back to when it exactly was built, but our well has been in use for many, many years, way before that site was actually constructed.
Okay. I think that's all for me now.
Maybe a clarification. When you say well before the site was constructed, we're talking about before the permits were issued in 2016?
I'm talking about, I believe it's been in operation prior to the 1980s. So this is one of our older wells. It's not something that we just installed. So we did not install it after 2016 or even after 1995, to my knowledge.
Thank you. Commissioner Wynn?
We have an obligation to see that city ordinances are enforced. But we also have an obligation to give business owners and property owners a chance to succeed. And those are the two competing interests, at least two competing interests that we have in this situation and in many situations. So I would be in favor of allowing this gentleman the opportunity to take some more time to respond to the city's claims.
And if I could chime in there, I would probably rephrase that. The competing interests are following the code on the one hand, and then on the other side, it's due process to the having a fair notice and hearing. And so where there's the allegation that there's only been minimal opportunity to respond, I think we have to give deference to that and give the gentleman here the opportunity to review the situation, review it with legal counsel, and come back. So I do believe that it is appropriate to give some additional time. I would recommend, if that's the direction you're going, to go to a date certain. Certainly, 4 or 5 weeks at least is probably sufficient. You don't want to give too long of a time, but you want to give ample time to give a fair opportunity. I mean, one possibility would be like the meeting that's the beginning of March. That's about 7 weeks out, March 7th. That's as an example, but that's my thought.
So I would move to table this issue until the next planning commission meeting.
Hang on to that for just a minute. We've got a public hearing involved with it.
You
too.
still want to first, ask if
Yes,
there's any
by
other
all
public comments.
Commissioner Shelton?
I tend to agree with Commissioner Wynn. My concern is the groundwater, and the water is a very precious resource in this area. And so I don't want to delay this any longer than is absolutely necessary.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been noticed as a public hearing, so we will turn it over to anyone in the audience, or is there anyone online? Okay. Anyone in the audience, you feel free to come up. You've got 3 minutes to provide public comment. No, you can sit down. Thank you. All right. Seeing nobody interested in providing public comment, we will close the public hearing and bring this back to the commission for consideration. Commissioner Thomas.
I just want to state on the record that I'm kind of concerned about the water, and especially with as much rain and stuff we've had. I mean, that is, like Commissioner Shelton said, a very precious commodity, and to lose a well, or even to have contaminants and have the EPA in here, I would tend to agree, and I think due process needs to occur, but I think we need to be really careful about the timeline and stuff too. So,
Commissioner Hatch?
Thank you, Chair. In reading through this, it appears to me that the applicant has been out of compliance for several years. The conditional use permit for each phase of the expansion growth has always stated very clearly what is required and what is against the requirements. And one of those is all vehicles shall be parked on a paved asphalt or concrete surface. As you look through all of the approvals that have been given, that is consistent. So at this point, I am not inclined to give more time for due process or for, I feel we've made, the city has made more than reasonable attempts to make contact and to resolve this issue prior to, and the applicant, unfortunately, or I'm sorry for you and your employee, but I do feel the city needs to move forward on this, so I will not be a proponent of allowing more time.
Well, it's an interesting discussion or subject, really. I agree with all of the comments really that have been provided. It's hard to find a middle ground, right? It's a precious resource. The fact that it hasn't been in compliance for the last 3 years, I don't think another 4 weeks is really going to harm it. On the other hand, it does specifically say in 2 different conditional permits to make sure that everything is parked on asphalt. And it's hard to make a requirement, at least in my mind, and maybe I'm entirely off base, make a requirement of it's not the applicant, it's the business owner, in conjunction with postponing, especially one that would meet all of the concerns that have been shared this morning. We're not going to shut down, or sorry, this evening. We've been here a long time. Especially one, we're not going to shut down the business for 4 weeks while we wait to hear it, if it does get tabled. And the only thing I can keep coming back to, I'd love to hear what the rest of you say, is if we do table this for a matter of weeks, I would like to see an update from staff where they're going out either once a week or every other week and reporting to see if the conditions of approval that have already been made are being held to over the course of the next 4 weeks while we have it tabled. Are the vehicles now being parked on asphalt? I don't see a lot of space on this site to park vehicles on the asphalt. It looks like it's going to require some improvements in order to make that happen. And when we say asphalt, I brought this up before, we're not talking about just asphalting the lot. We're talking about putting in appropriate curbs, storm drains, collection systems, taking it to the right location, and then disposing of that waste properly. So I appreciate what's being brought up. With that statement, Commissioner Wynn, help me out here. I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you, and then Commissioner Quinney thereafter.
I drove past the site and visited it just a couple of days ago. Not the same date that's shown here in the pictures, but just a couple of days ago. And there were lots of vehicles parked on the gravel and on dirt. So I think those pictures are pretty accurate. I want to ask Mr. Davenport, are we in any danger of that water well becoming contaminated anytime soon? Is contamination imminent?
Here's the difficult part. I'm so glad that we haven't had an issue, but when we do have an issue, there's nothing I can do about it. And our well is very deep, and so the remediation here is to drill another well to pump out the contaminated material and then to process that material and then to place it back into the environment. That is a very expensive process. We're doing that currently, and Kennecott is actually paying for that in another area of our valley, millions and millions of dollars. There are areas in Bountiful where chemicals have been spilled onto a single site and they have lost all the wells, and again, millions and millions of dollars, because the process for remediating this is to drill another well, multiple wells, pull up the water you hope is contaminated, and then treat that water and then release it back into the environment. And so I'm so glad we haven't had a problem. I can't tell you whether we'll have a problem in the next 4 weeks.
How would we know if we had a problem?
We have to test that well every week or so, and we have to turn those reports into the state. The minute I get a test that does not pass state requirements, I have to report that. We have to shut that down and not use it in culinary consumption, and then we'll start looking for whoever caused it. And when I find out who caused it, there will be fines not only from the state but from us. We will all enter into lawsuits, and it will be very, very nasty. But no, you're right. For 3 years, we have not had a problem.
Commissioner Quinney?
I'm sure it seems like I'm very much going to vote to just move this thing right along based on the comments earlier. However, I am sympathetic on 2 points. One, as a manager owner, sometimes you are subject to the mistakes or errors that your employees make, which sucks. I've been terminated for that issue. So I'm sympathetic to him that he's got an employee who was not doing their job appropriately, despite our best efforts. The other one is he seems willing and to comply right now. However, we need to move this as quickly as possible. I don't think 2 weeks is necessarily enough. I don't want to go 7 weeks. I would suggest that any motion that it would be for the second meeting of February. Was that the 21st?
Yeah, so that's 5 weeks out.
I
2
would,
meetings
I
out.
would wonder if there is any conditions we can put on that tabling that all vehicles that are currently parked inappropriately be immediately moved to an appropriate location, either on or off site, and that they remain compliant to the current CUPs fully for the next 5 weeks while we wait to hear the response on this in 5 weeks. And if we don't, then we can make a motion to move forward with this as quickly as we need to. I don't know how to word that, but is there a way we can put conditions on this tabling, Duncan?
You could, and I'd recommend that you maybe hear from the business owner here and see if he can meet those requirements, maybe before you make that motion, but.
Certainly. I'm not interested in trying to put a hardship on a business owner or worst case, put somebody out of business, especially when you appear to be interested in complying and figuring this out and being a good partner. However, we do have to be aware of the city, the larger city as a whole, and take care of that. So I'd be willing to invite you to come back up and see what your thoughts are on being able to become compliant with the current CUPs as stated, on a very black and white level. Like it is exactly as they're stated. There's no wavering. There's no, well, we'll do it for an hour. It's, can you meet those requirements?
Suspend the rules first.
We've thrown them out the window in this meeting.
Yeah, here we don't have any, this is not an application, so my legal opinion is that as long as you're acting as a group and you're comfortable with the rules, you don't need to make a motion to suspend the
Okay.
rules, so.
Please.
Before we move forward, could I interject for a moment? Commissioner Allen said some things that made me wonder if it's possible for the property owner, business owner, to comply at all within the next 4 weeks or 5 weeks. Could you talk about that?
Right
a
now, I'm
little
only
bit?
concerned about getting the vehicles off the
So
gravel
just
and
the-
off the stuff. Curbing,
Just the fact that
curbing,
they're-
asphalting, that's a different conversation that we'll have in 5 weeks. Right now, I want to get everything off the lot that's not supposed to be there.
So you're just focused on the surfaces that the
Yes.
cars are on, whether they are
If we're gonna
concrete
continue
or
with-
asphalt.
Yeah, if we're gonna continue with what his expected operations of business are, we're gonna have a different conversation about that. Right now, I want to get the property as compliant as possible so that there isn't a leaking vehicle that's pushing water and contaminants into the water well, so.
And I
Please.
think it's appropriate. Maybe there's two questions there that you can touch on. One is entirely unfair, and I apologize. The
Is what,
first,
sorry?
the first one is good. So answer what Commissioner Quinney suggested. Commissioner Shelton's question is also very good, probably unfair for you at this point. And in general, that is, how long do you believe it would take to actually construct those improvements necessary to asphalt, curb, gutter, some of those kinds of things? There's going to be a dollar amount, there's going to be a timing amount. That's why it's unfair to ask you that while, this, but maybe your best guess at that.
Okay, what was the first question? Sorry.
First question is, can you come into compliance immediately?
So I can move everything that I can possibly move on to the current asphalt, although I can tell you this, maybe to allay some fears there. It's not 3 years that we've been operating there, since 2016. And before that, it was a manufacturing plant. And if I was told the well was put in 2012. So I don't know that for certain, but the well apparently is tested every week and has never had a problem either before my occupying this and owning this property or afterwards. I've also done soil testing with the geologist in our soil to make sure, because guys, I drink the water out there. The very water, I don't know if it's exactly from that well or not, but whatever comes into my building is West Jordan water and I drink it. So I don't want to drink polluted water, very bad. But So we did some soils testing just on our own and found that we have about, we have 12 inches of good hard gravel mixed in with a little bit of sandy loam where it has settled just a little bit. We initially gravelled the entire area. And were told at that time that we were fine with going forward. But I will say this, our meeting for our CUPs was exactly 2 minutes long. And I had no idea what I was agreeing to because it was 2 minutes long. There was a brawl that happened before my time and my turn. And it was about a farm property being converted into homes here in West Jordan. And that took way over the meeting time. And so I had a 2-hour presentation ready to go. And I got exactly 2 minutes. And then I was approved and sent out the door. And the only requirement at that time was that I not store used tires anywhere but on the asphalt. That's it. And so it is brand new news to me to see what Mr. Forsyth has brought forward and put in into this. But I'm willing to work on it and try to get the vehicles onto the asphalt, first of all. Second of all, underneath the sandy loam is hard packed clay that does not transfer anything, oil or anything else. And furthermore, I don't want any leaking oil vehicle on my property, period, no matter what it's doing. Certainly there might be something that comes into the repair shop as it was approved that has a little bit of a drip. But we have nothing that comes in that has some kind of magnificent oil leakage. All of our oil that we have, as well as other like types of petroleum oils, are put into a burner. We have a tank out there, the double-walled tank that was installed for us to recycle that and use it during the winter time. So we have never had a spill. We don't anticipate any spills. From Mr. Davenport, I'm not. I'm very cognizant myself and aware. I don't want to drink bad water. I don't want to spill. I'd call him first if there was something. And as he's testified, his well has been clean now for, well, I don't know when it started being clean, but at least 3 years, we know it's been clean.
Okay,
And
so
the well cycle, by the way, this whole thing we're talking about is 250 days. So if I'm going to contaminate the well, it would have been contaminated years and years and years ago, not anytime soon. So I'm just, again, asking for that temporary reprieve here. You're talking about a dozen employees that would be out of work tomorrow. And some of them live right here in West Jordan. Not all, but some.
And we
So-
appreciate that. That's one of the reasons why we're asking some of these questions. So you mentioned you can move most of the vehicles off onto the asphalt. When you say most, are we talking 50%, 75%?
No, most. The ones that I really need that are trouble are the U-Haul vehicles. The ones where I'm a business that needs to be there. I'm the only large U-Haul center on the west side of the valley. Now, I used to make some money doing that, and it was a good thing. But since the recession and the housing downturn, most of the rentals are what we call in-town rentals, or they're just simply people in West Jordan renting for West Jordan, moving inside of West Jordan, not somewhere else. It's too expensive to do it somewhere else, to get a truck to go somewhere else.
Okay, so appreciate that. We understand
All
now.
of the trailers, by the way, are on asphalt already. Never had a trailer on the back.
On the second part of the question, so Commissioner Shelton's question, do you have any idea on how long it would take you?
Years
in order
ago,
to-
I was quoted $350,000 for the asphalt that would go from the front, where the picture of the U-Haul trucks was, to the back of the building, where the current asphalt ends. And right now, there's no asphalt. You can't do anything today. I have a personal situation, or company situation. I'm involved in a lawsuit with the state of Utah. And it has taken every nickel and dime. I've had to pay for it myself, and it's taken every nickel and dime that I have to fund this thing. But I'm in my 7th year of my 2-year lawsuit. So that's kind of where I'm at. Otherwise, I had fully planned to put in asphalt, although my soils engineer told me that you're going to get a lot more oil seepage from my asphalt than you'd ever get from my cars.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing is if we did table everything and came back and said, as long as you can comply with the conditional use permit by a certain date, that certain date is probably years away.
Well, it could be years away for completing the asphalt, but I could move the vehicles to a large extent onto the asphalt and or indoors.
Okay, and
I have a whole bunch of indoor space that's not used at the moment.
Okay, as has been stated, the conditions of the initial permit were all vehicles on asphalt, and that's what we're focused on, at least right now.
So I don't know where that came from. As I said, I had my 2-minute thing, and that was not part of the conversation in my 2 minutes of time before the planning commission and getting my permits. Now, it may be in there, but that's something I'd like to talk about with my attorney and bring up with y'all.
All right, appreciate your time. Any other questions for the
A
applicant?
whole bunch of people lined up here. Commissioner Wynn, I think, is first.
Well, are there questions for the applicant specifically, or
No.
just discussion items?
I have a question for the applicant.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So I appreciate you being here. I definitely can see your sincerity, but you are a business owner and you have agreed to a document that you did not know what it had. I was at the Planning Commission meeting. I was on the commission when you were approved in 2016. You could take as much time as you needed to present your case and your applicant. You were not held to 2 minutes. So as much as I appreciate that is your memory, and I haven't gone back and read through the minutes, but just knowing on previous meetings that applicant does have the time to present. We do work through the applications in detail. It's unfortunate that you didn't recognize what you were agreeing to when you agreed to it. But I really do.
If I agreed to
No,
it.
please don't interrupt me.
Sorry.
I really feel that as a business owner, this is your responsibility. We have given you ample notice. It is what it is, and it is our drinking water, and I feel very strongly that if you're not in compliance after this many years, then there is a problem.
All right, appreciate your time. You can be seated. Commissioner Wynn?
I just want to add one other thing. I'm not an attorney, but my experience in life tells me that if we don't allow more time here for due process, there's going to be a very expensive lawsuit, expensive for the city and for the business. I'd rather not do that.
Commissioner Quinney?
Shoot, I'm trying to think what I had to say now. I would be in favor of moving this to the February 21st, subject to all vehicles being moved off. We're going to, I would appreciate at that time that we have at least a recap in writing of the minutes from the meetings of these different conditional use permit applications, because I don't see them in here. Not that I'm looking for more reading assignments, but I think it's necessary at this point, as well as a report on the history of the well, Mr. Davenport, just so we have all of our ducks in a row. And at least have one random site visit between now and February 21st, whoever does those site visits, to see if we have compliance. And at that point, we have a conversation as a business item, because we'll have closed this public hearing. We'll just make a decision at that point what the next step is. That would be my proposal. So if anybody has any issues, I just would move that we follow those conditions that I laid out for a meeting on February 21st. Does that work?
I've got
Duncan?
2 quick questions.
And you're talking about continuing the public hearing
Continuing
until
this,
that,
I think that a little bit on what Commissioner Wynn is saying, we need to, I just feel like we owe it to him to get an opportunity to state his case. Whether right or wrong, he hasn't had an opportunity to defend himself to his fullest capacity, and I think we need to give him that time.
And it sounds like you're holding off on any final action, but asking for to
Yeah, so
bring
I would
back
move that we,
compliance on the
yeah,
parking.
I would move that
before
we
then.
continue the decision on this to the February 21st meeting, subject to full compliance by the business owner with the request of the staff reports at that time. And if we have non-compliance at that time, then we'll make a decision as a planning commission based upon the facts that we have at that time.
Commissioner Thomas?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have 5-4 with,
Question, sir, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I'm not clear that that was stated as a motion.
I said it was a motion.
Okay.
Okay, we have 5-4, one against, with Commissioner Hatch being the dissenting vote. Motion carries. One other item I'd like to just make sure that we're all aware of, unrelated to this. We are making a recommendation, or will be in February, making a recommendation to the Community Development Director. What is the process at that point? And he's already stepped out, so I'll have to, Duncan, what happens once it goes to him?
Right, and obviously the reason he stepped out was to avoid any conflict of interest because he can't be involved in both levels of the process. But then it is actually just like, as you mentioned, a recommendation from this body. You're doing a lot more of the looking at the facts and so forth. The final decision, as you said, will be the Community Development Director's decision. And he'll have that opportunity it's up to his discretion to talk further with the business owner or act on your recommendation as he sees fit. Obviously, the other part of the due process is whatever his final decision is, could be appealed internally to the Board of Adjustments. And then also it could be appealed from there to district court, depending on, those would be the appeal processes. So yeah, our city code is not very specific on the Community Development Director's exact process. There's a lot of discretion that he has. It does not have to be a formal open meeting like this. It could be simply him meeting with the business owner to give one last opportunity for due process, or he can make his decision completely on the record that you create here on February 21st. So,
Thank you. All right. That meeting, or that portion is done. The next item on the agenda is the West Jordan Comprehensive General Plan Future Land Use Map, which is being recommended to be continued to,
February 7th, right?
man, iPads are fun, aren't they?
yeah,
To
the next
February
meeting in
7th.
3 weeks, right, Mark?
I'll do we need to entertain a motion to
Yeah,
postpone?
I move that we move this item to the February 7th meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Final item, informational items, a review of the balanced housing report for 2022. Mr. Forsyth.
All right. This is what you've all been waiting for. So, yeah, just to give a little bit of background on this. So the balanced housing ordinance is an ordinance in the city that effectively caps or doesn't allow for any new multifamily developments with various exceptions. But as part of that, so in other words, it's capped any new multifamily developments until our single family to multifamily housing ratio can match what's called for in the ordinance. And so the target there is 77% single family to 23% multifamily. And right now, so what we do is we run the numbers every year based on building permits and to see where we're at in this ratio. And so for this year, our ratio is at 73% single family homes and 27% multifamily, which is exactly the same as it was last year. 2022 was pretty slow as far as new units go for both single family and multifamily. We only got about 138 single family homes as compared to over 400 last year, and 26 multifamily. So we got some catching up to do. But anyway, so as it stands, to get to that break-even point, we'd need about 6,431 more single-family units, and that's assuming we got no multifamily units in between that time. So, yeah, we're a ways off. But anyway, that's pretty much the report for 2022.
All right, question for staff. Commissioner Hatch.
I have a question. So as far as permits for single-family homes, do you have any idea what 2023 looks like? Do you have an anticipation of, yeah, get your crystal ball out, I don't know.
Kind of more on a personal level, I'm doing less and less building permits nowadays. We've got Megan Jensen doing a lot of those, but yeah, from what I've seen so far, it's pretty slow.
Okay, thank you. I mean, obviously, I'm asking you to read the future and get out your tarot cards, but just out of curiosity, so thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah.
Commissioner Quinney.
How many outstanding multifamily units do we have that are grandfathered in under this plan? Because we don't count the accepted, not accepted, the accepted units, right? Any senior housing or?
Yeah, we don't have any way to track that, unfortunately. So
So we don't know how.
shorter answer is we don't know.
We just don't know.
But yeah, the way the ordinance is written, it just kind of lumps everything in.
For the less initiated, why did we come up with this ratio of 73 to 27? What was the purpose of
I
that?
believe it was based on the general plan ratio at that time.
That's just something that the city council at the time
think
decided
so,
and hasn't
yeah.
been amended over the years. There's no financial reason, or we don't want to be a multifamily city.
Pretty much,
Type of
as far
reason.
as I know.
It was a city council decision, and it
Sure,
was
I just-
because of the high expectancy of all of the,
The WSPA stuff, right?
yeah. I kind of was involved with a little bit of that, so I do know a little bit of the background on that, but that's where that came from.
When was the last time that was seriously revisited? That ratio?
That's a good question. I mean, we've done it. We've kind of added an exception here and there over the years, as you probably know. But I don't know, Scott. Do you have any background on that? Or?
It does come up from time to time. The general plan's been a great forum for some of that discussion. But Mark's right. We revisit it every time we come up with a new exception to that. While we're chasing this ratio, I don't think it's a complete failure because it gives the council and the commission the ability to place multifamily in places that make sense, near interchanges, near existing infrastructure, near transit, all of those things. But it is something that I believe the commission has brought up, 2-3 months ago. Perhaps there's another adjustment that needs to roll forward, and we're happy to entertain those conversations. But I don't know if that answers your question, Commissioner.
Just wondering out loud.
Commissioner Wynn.
Does adopting this ordinance mean that we absolutely cannot approve any more multifamily dwellings, or is it just a recommendation that we do not?
So this is just a public announcement. The ordinance requires us to publicly announce these numbers at the beginning of every year. The commissioners cannot approve multifamily housing that does not meet this ordinance, nor can the council, quite honest, unless they change the ordinance. If they were to consider a new exception, they would have to go through a code amendment process and then follow any adjustments they feel is necessary. So, Commissioner Wynn, if, for example, the council amends the code to not consider townhomes as multifamily, they would have to go and make that code amendment first and then consider townhome application, for example. There are a lot of exceptions, though, that are currently baked into the code.
Commissioner Thomas.
In my opinion, it's a lot better managed now than it was previously, and that shows, I think, with more of the evening. I know we still got a long ways to go and stuff, but I have noticed a significant trend in better management of the ratio, high-density housing and single housing.
I've heard similar statements, which I appreciate, and I trust all of you from that perspective. In my tenure, we've talked a little bit about this and the balanced housing, and maybe this is a training later. But what do we not otherwise manage this through zoning and land use maps? And maybe that's a very elementary question. Why is this in addition?
You're absolutely right. Most of the communities that have traditional Euclidean zoning manage this through their general plan and zoning law. The council back in 2012, 2013, I believe at the time when it was adopted, felt that this additional tool was a way to manage this particular aspect of growth. It was also a very clear indication to the development community what their intentions were above and beyond what you would see in your general plan or zoning ordinance. Commissioner Thomas, you mentioned during this same period of time, there was a lot of multifamily, big multifamily complexes rolling through. And so it was in large part because of what was happening at the city at that time.
I'd also like to understand if, given the numbers that we have ahead of us, is there even enough land outside of the accepted areas that we could even make this work?
That's a very good question, and it's a bit complex to answer at this point, just because we're dealing with, not only the current future land use map, but also any proposed changes, or that density, that potential density could expand, it could contract. It just kind of depends on the development we get and what the city council decides.
I think a lot of this discussion too interplays with the availability of infrastructure. And I know Mr. Davenport's department has done a lot recently with updating the various master plans, culinary water, and we'll have stormwater and some of the other ones coming. And if I understand correctly, that all of those types of things, unless we have the infrastructure in place, if we overcommit with our future land use map and our zoning map, we might not be able to deliver the water, the sewer, the storm drain facilities, and so forth. And we might develop too fast to keep up, so to speak. So I think what's happening right now is the council and the mayor and the various departments, including Mr. Davenport's, are highly focused on the availability of infrastructure to support the projects as they come through, and to identify the ERCs, the equivalent residential units that are available on each site. So, and I know there's some more tools that are coming into play that'll help calculate those numbers much more efficiently and fairly for all applications as they come in. So I think it's really necessary to have multiple types of methods in planning to be able to make this all function. Because the bottom line is we're at the western side of this county and most of the development is happening here. And without all of those types of things, this balanced housing ordinance, infrastructure master plans, updating the general plan, our zoning map, our future land use map, without all those things in conjunction and ways to calculate the ERCs, we wouldn't have as good of an ability to grasp and have the decision makers, you as a planning commission and ultimately the council and key staff members wouldn't have the tools they need to make the best decisions to have everything work. It's pretty complicated, but I really do believe that this balanced housing part of our city code is an integral piece to that overall product, or that overall set of pieces that allow you to plan for the future, especially the rate at which we're potentially growing.
Commissioner Quinney?
So just following this conversation, what are the optics of having this in place where we have not been anywhere near compliance in 10 plus years and unlikely to ever get compliant based on what we've got out there? What's the point of it anymore? We've got the land use, like Commissioner Allen was mentioning, we've got the rules in place. We don't have a lot of room out there left for potential big developments that are allowed based on our current land use and zoning maps. So I just don't understand the optics of keeping this this weird ratio in play that we're never ever going to actually meet. I'm just asking what the optics are. I mean, do you
The
guys?
optics
I mean,
depend on your point of view, right? That's all dependent. You know, the council may see it as a very beneficial tool. From a professional planning standpoint, there are probably areas where I would adjust to attack some of the housing affordability challenges that we're dealing with. But having done most of my career outside of a balanced housing ordinance, we could absolutely achieve the same thing by using other tools. But the council has decided that this is good for West Jordan, and even if at full development of the city, we don't exactly hit that ratio, and that's to be determined. We could get fairly close, actually. If we use this ordinance to push the multifamily to where it makes sense, again, major corridors and things like that, then it's served its purpose.
Is the ordinance the responsibility or the responsible party for pushing the multifamily to the IOZ, or is it the fact that we created an IOZ or the hillside, whatever we're calling it, you know, the different various places where we've placed these exceptions? It feels like we did those so that we could draw them to that space, not because we have a balanced housing ordinance in place. I'm just, you know, as a second question, how many other cities have something like this? I feel like I have an idea where you lead on this, Scott, and so, and I honestly would like push the council to legitimately consider whether this is still necessary or whether it was necessary when it happened, right? Absolutely necessary. We needed to rein that in. Like, I mean, we were still. How many times have we had, oh, this was grandfathered in years ago, and we're just like, okay, let's just approve it because we didn't have a choice. Now we've put things in place to where we have the ability to have that say. Those grandfathered in projects are pretty much done, right? I feel like we've got more concerned residents who are volunteering their time. It seems to me that it's time for the city council to revisit whether this balanced housing ordinance is necessary so that we can kind of be a little bit more free to make decisions that make sense, not decisions that are determined by an ordinance that was made 11, 12 years ago. That's my thoughts.
And I think, if I'm tracking correctly, I think when McKenna brought this up a couple of months ago, that was kind of the gist of it. Let's have a conversation. The planning commission can make a recommendation to the city council, right, to revisit this. Is this something that we would want to have a little bit more of a conversation in a pre-meeting and then follow up in a post-meeting and actually present or suggest something to the city council?
It might be something that maybe the first conversation is part of our 5th Tuesday meeting, whatever agenda. The next time we have one of
Yeah, I
those
don't think
meetings.
they've scheduled any for this
Yeah,
year.
so
is my-
whenever we have that next one, they're busy. I don't want to be like, hey, drop everything you're doing, guys, and just start working on this. That just seems ridiculous with all the things that they have going on. But it would be an interesting conversation for us to have in that next meeting to kind of get a temperature check from them as to what they think. I have a pretty good idea where many of them lean, based on our last gathered meeting. But I would love to have that conversation again when maybe we can have cooler heads prevail.
Yeah, just in response to that, the great questions, great comments. Ultimately, this is a policy decision, right? And you can make policy recommendations to the council, the main policy-making body. So What I would recommend is that at some point you place it on your agenda for some discussion, and then when you're at some point, if you're ready for some kind of official recommendation to the council, then make it so you can make an action. But you can, if you think it out and you have a specific recommendation, you can always forward that to the council. It just has to be properly placed on your agenda to be able to do it. And you may need more information, so you may be asking staff for what information you might need to make that recommendation. So those are my thoughts on that for procedurally, legally, how you'd move it forward. So.
Yeah, I like it. I see the zoning and map really as our belt and suspenders, and this is like adding duct tape to it. And maybe duct tape isn't their appropriate option. Maybe we need to do something else. I would love to hear from staff what some alternatives could be that would help mitigate any concerns or other issues, if there are any. I mean, just hypothetically, if we were to get rid of it, would we want something else in place from a staff perspective that would still help with certain parts of it?
And there are some other code changes that are in the process, and obviously you usually like to see the alternatives in place first before you remove something else that you're counting on. But one of the code changes, the council on its own initiative is looking at its own council staff and leadership, and they've talked about it in some work sessions. But there are some procedural zoning changes in Title 13. One of which, for instance, and there's several all in the one proposed code amendment, but one is anytime anybody comes in with a proposed application to amend the future land use map, that they have to have a specific application with it. Otherwise, it's not a complete application and it will not move forward to the Planning Commission or Council. And there's about 6 or 7 at least major pieces like that. And you looked at the ordinance and gave a recommendation on it here, like 2 months ago or whatever. And I think that is one that will solve some of the issues that maybe balanced housing might be the only other way to prevent some of those issues, and maybe it might help with a few issues that even balanced housing doesn't help with. So I know the council is thinking I don't know if their thought pattern was so much other ways versus balanced housing, but other ways to prevent potential problems, to not having enough infrastructure or not being equitable in the use of infrastructure, or having an application process that doesn't create something that's not functional. Those kinds of things are the questions they're more focused on. But I still think it crosses over to partly what you're talking about here. They really do have a big focus on ameliorating all these types of issues.
Great conversation. Any other comments? It's just informational items, so after this, we can adjourn if there's a motion.
I move to adjourn.
We are adjourned until February 7th.
Recording stopped.